good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever, wherever you are listening to this. I appreciate your time more than you know. At this point, I would normally say straight to it, but today I actually have a special guest with me, a gentleman by the name of Adam Taylor. For all you Celtics fans out there, I'm sure you're very, very familiar with this gentleman, but for those of you that might be here, my Florida or my personal fans from Jacksonville, this is a gentleman that covers the Boston Celtics on a level that I could only dream to get to be honest. He is with several organizations, including Celtics Blog. What can I say? This is a guy that a week ago, I was watching his content and I was just kind of throwing out a shout out saying like, man, go check this guy out. And through that one little simple act, I am here with him today. Honored. It's a pleasure. Adam, what's up with you, brother?
Yeah, that introduction was far too kind, man. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, man. I truly appreciate you taking the time to have me on your channel.
No, sir. The pleasure is all mine, sir. So when you have somebody like him with me on here, I know that I alluded to in my previous episode that I was going to get into a camp battle kind of series where I took up, similar players, positions, roles, and wanted to get into a deep dive. And I promised that the first one I would do would be Al Horford versus Rob Williams, which coincidentally, Adam actually just did a deep dive on these two, more so onto their passing ability was the, premise of the video, but definitely go check that out on his channel. So I would like to pick his brain and, kind of go back and forth when it comes to Rob Williams and Al Horford. And then we will also touch on another battle that actually wasn't as obvious to me, but seems to really be picking up steam because a lot of people are on the start Aaron Nesmith train, where you find me on the Josh Richardson side of the track. So let's start with, you good with starting with Rob and Al Horford, Adam?
Yeah, man, wherever you want to start's good with me.
10-4. So right now, I would say that to me personally, there is not any situation, question that I cannot just give you a definitive answer more so than on Rob versus Al, who is going to start, who is going to finish, what their roles are going to be. Just, I really am lost as far as what you can expect. You've got a guy who has showed beautiful flashes last year in Rob when he was the starter, 12-4. I mean, if his per 36 is just out of this world, starter like minutes of 15 points, 14 rebounds, 3+ blocks. But then again, you've got a guy named Al Horford, multiple time all-star, true vet. And oh, by the way, he has also played with these gentlemen in the past at a high level, multiple Eastern Conference runs. Also Dennis Schroeder. And guess what? He was also coached by Ime Udoka in Philly. So Adam, I know in your video, you alluded to more so around the fact of Rob being the starter, Al being the starter, bringing Rob off the bench kind of to be that spark plug. Just go into that a little bit more. How do you see that camp battle? Just give me your general thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I see these guys almost directly splitting minutes, 24 apiece. Al's too old where you want to be pushing him towards that 30 minutes a night area, especially in the regular season. I'd much rather him have a very defined 24 minutes a night role as a starter, and then have Rob playing a very similar, 24 minutes a game, coming off the bench. And if you want to have a third big in that rotation, then you can bring these guys down to 20 minutes a piece and give a third big 8 minutes. But the reason I want Al to start is specifically because of impact from the bench. I think that when you've got Robert Williams in your starting lineup, you're always going to be a factor at the opening area of a game. Rob Williams is always going to be highly impactful whenever he's on the floor. However, my concern is by having Al Horford doesn't have that same level of impact. What he does is he steadies the ship. He makes sure you never get too far ahead or too far behind. He's very much a consummate professional. Every possession, you take it one possession at a time.
True.
So for me, the Celtics have had multiple seasons now where slow starts have been a concerning trend. Obviously, there's a new coach in Ime Udoka, but it's a very similar level of personnel within that starting five. And some of that makes me feel like I would much rather Robert Williams come off the bench because you've got guaranteed impact, guaranteed high scoring, high upside, game turning impact by bringing Robert Williams in off the bench. Whereas on the flip side, if you're down and you need that impact, well, Al Horford's not going to give you that because that's not his game. So by having Al start the game and then maybe be the first sub out, maybe be the second sub out, and bring Robert Williams in that way. Well, now you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a 5-out offense with Al Horford, which accentuates Jaylen Brown's skill set as a slashing pull-up shooter. You're accentuating the space that needs to be there for Jason Tatum. And you're also allowing guys to work off ball more in any wing actions that you want to run, any weave actions that you want to run with Al as the dribble handoff guy. And to me, that's super important to get guys into a groove of off-ball movement early, and then rely on the lob threat and the short roll abilities of Rob Williams once that the rotations start to come into play during the game. That would be why I'd personally like to start with Al, because I think Rob's impact off the bench is far too valuable to lose when you've got somebody as high caliber basketball intellect as Al Horford that could start and end games for you and make sure you never get too far behind in a game.
Yes, sir. A lot of good points, and hard to disagree with anything you say there. The Celtics, one of the most frustrating things for me last year, besides the bench, the lack of scoring, it was the slow starts, man. It was like, how like, did y'all stretch? I mean, what's going on? Like, I mean, long night, guys, come on. Like, so I am with you there, but for those same reasons, as far as that quick burst, that is kind of why I want Rob in there with the starting. I want Rob in there as far as the starter without coming off the bench. I want Rob's that immediate spark of energy just to set that tone. His pick and roll game with Marcus Smart is one of beauty. That defensive anchor, even though I don't think you lose too much defensively with Al, I mean, Rob is just another level, being able to go out on the perimeter, guard and block guys like Harden's 3-point attempt. But it also kind of goes into my view of the second lineup, the bench. And that to me is going to be big with Dennis Schroeder kind of manning the front as a scoring option. And when that is the case, I want as much spacing around him as possible. Now, Dennis and Rob would probably be an incredible duo at a pick and roll, but Dennis to be able to orchestrate and attack the rim, and then be able to kick out to a Al Horford, to a Nesmith, to a Peyton Pritchard, to a Wancho. I mean, just that the spacing on that, I think, is extremely important. And, just kind of like I said, putting Rob in as a starter to me allows you to then finish the game with Al Horford. And I know everyone, this is no spoiler warning. It matters who finishes the game opposed to who starts the game. And I don't want Rob to actually get lost if he's not a starter and he's not finishing the game. Like, his development as far as for our future big man is crucial this year. I want to see him take that next step. I'm with you. I mean, if this kid can average 7-8 points, 7-8 rebounds, and play 2 block defense every night on 17, 18, 19 minutes, imagine him at 24. So I agree with that split, but Rob, it would be my starter to then allow Al, being a veteran, being just somebody that's been in every situation. He's seen it all. He's done it all. His IQ, his ability to stretch the floor, and having a career 75% free throw shooter opposed to Rob, who's in the 60s, free throw percent to finish the game, I also think is important. What's your thoughts on that, sir?
So the defense seems to be one of the main points that you kind of like Rob being with that starting unit for, due to the rim protection that he provides. For me, I feel that Rob Williams operates on a brand of basketball that I call bailout defense, where his athleticism helps him recover from mistakes quite quickly. And True. The blocks are a subsequent kind of way of allowing you to easily forget the mistake that led to the shot attempt in the first place.
He was out of position, then had to make up with a block.
Exactly. And I think that it's very easy for someone that comes in and looks at the box score to be like, well, Rob Williams averages 3 or 4 blocks a night. He needs to be the starting big. And I can completely understand that train of thought. But for me, it's very much Rob still needs to learn positional defense. He needs to understand his athletic ability is unrivaled on this roster, and his rim protection is phenomenal. However, the reason he has so many blocks is because he has to chase down guys that have beat him off the dribble, or he will bite on a jab step and just give up that 1 little inch of driving lane.
Flying into the stands.
Yeah. So for me, like, having him against starter caliber guys that are going to be just that little bit faster, that little bit more tuned in with what they want, how they want to manipulate him defensively, that could, and we saw Rob have some starter minutes last year and he was very impactful offensively, but defensively, he's still got a little bit of development to do just to understand when to bite on a pump fake, when to bite on a jab step, when to drop, when to show, when to hedge.
And I think IQ.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons, again, I would like him against second units more, because I'm not saying it's a huge talent drop, but having to show on a pick and roll against Damian Lillard or having to show on a pick and roll against Corey Joseph is an enormous difference. True. And I think another year of development with consistent minutes and consistent health, and working with Al Horford, who is one of the best positional defenders at his position in the league, because huge. Al Horford lacks that athleticism. He's not a guy that can have that bear-like brand type of defense. He's not the fastest, so he learned how to use his body and use angles to cut off driving lanes, to force you. So I think a year coming off the bench and learning off Al, watching how Al uses his body and positioning himself, learning off him during training and during film room sessions and stuff, I think that would actually be more beneficial to Rob in a development standpoint than asking him to start and get cooked for a season.
Could you imagine Rob Williams if he was to develop like a pull-up game, or not even a three-pointer, just a
mid-range off that short roll, dude?
Wow. Could you imagine if he, wow. Woo. Having Al Horford is back. I mean, regardless of who starts, actually, who do you want to finish the game?
I want Al Horford to start and finish. I'd like Rob Williams' minutes to come predominantly at the end of the first, beginning of the second, and then I'd like him to end out the third as well, so you're in a good position coming into the fourth. I'd also like Rob to start the fourth, so you have that high impact, and then Al to come in and kind of just finish it off. Yeah.
You also, one other thing I'll touch on briefly, because you did mention, in a perfect world, would you rather just see 24-24, or would you like to maybe take the minutes down a little bit to get Kanter some play? What do you see as far as Kanter?
Yeah, so I see Kanter being very situational.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the guys that I value Kanter for what he is. I understand his pick and roll defense isn't great, his lateral movement isn't great, but his offensive output, and I said this last year, Tristan Thompson can offensive rebound with the best of them, but he doesn't have the touch around the rim to be as productive as. Yeah. So I think that situationally, there'll be times where Kanter probably absorbs 12 minutes and maybe both guys lose 6 minutes apiece, or maybe Rob loses 4 and Al loses. It all depends on matchups and on pace of play and who's going to fit best. But in an ideal world, maybe 8 minutes for Kanter, maybe 20 for Al, 20 for Rob. Keep these guys fresh to the playoffs where Kanter's less of a factor. And now you can give Rob or Al increased minutes, because one's old and one's injury prone. So you need to find a real good balance to keep these guys healthy for when the crunch games come later in the year. So the more you can manage their minutes now, early in the season, the better that's going to suit you down the line. And I understand you need guys in rhythm and you need them to understand the schemes and the system, but 18 to 22 minutes a night, you can understand the scheme and system. You are in a rhythm, you're playing consistently, and you just start scaling that up as you get closer to the playoffs.
I completely agree. And that's also a reason why I know you did a video back as far as for the Fournier TPE targets. And that's why when I hope they actually venture into that later on in the season, they target maybe an additional person for the front court just to beef that up. Because like you said, one's, mid-30s, the other one's injury prone. If something happens to either one of them, man, oof. Because then you're talking about Kanter having to play those minutes again, getting into the playoffs. And like you said, defensively, people underrate, I guess, or don't appreciate him as an offensive player. And this is as good as it gets in the post, how crafty he is. His rebounding is as good as it gets. But, man, he gets cooked defensively, man. And, that what Bam did to him in that pick and roll back, and that's Miami. So you might want to look to actually strengthen up that front court, but hopefully that's down the line. So I'm with you. You made some really good points. Like I said, this is one of those arguments that it doesn't even really matter to me as much. I kind of need to see it. A lot of people think Rob has lost the step. I'm not there. I feel he just averaged 14, 6, shot in the mid 30s. And they went to the man and said, listen, you have to sit down. We're trying to tank and you're affecting winning too much. Go relax. And then
Yeah, exactly.
he wasn't injured. It was just he got to hang out. And now he's motivated back where he belongs. So I am so excited about this big man rotation. To answer the video question from the other day, you asked, yes, those are both two of the best passing big men in the game. I mean, their ability to rob his defense. I think you made a fantastic point. He is at a position. I think that will come with age, and hopefully being tutored by Al Horford will get him to that next level. But what those two guys can do and their skills is it's impressive, and I can't wait to see how it translates.
Yeah, I'm all for it, dude. I'm of the camp where I know double big lineups last year were a nightmare, but I'd like to see certain plays where you've got Al Horford and Robert Williams running a horn set. So you've got the vertical spacing of Rob Williams driving down to the hoop, and then you've got the perimeter spacing of Al Horford popping, run some dribble handoff actions to get Rob Williams into the short roll and start developing his secondary playmaking from the post, or ask him to pull up for that mid-range. There's a world where you can use both of these guys together, 100%. And it's not the same as Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice. This is a completely different animal. Now, would I like to see that consistently? Not a chance. Would I like to see that sparingly when it was really necessary against teams that also run double big lineups, more traditional style teams? Yeah. Maybe you're talking about the way Detroit might want to line up with their plethora of bigs and the way
Milwaukee,
that they're going to be. Yeah,
when you got Giannis and Brook Lopez.
You need to have this option available, right? Same against the Lakers when you're going against the Lakers, who are just giants. Yes. I call them the Golden Goal Lakers because everyone's over 50. But, they are tall, they have size, they have height. So having the ability to do that with two guys that are completely different skill sets, but still complement how each other will play is also a factor into, hey, I'd still want Rob off the bench, but being able to bring Rob off the bench and slide Al down to the 4 and now run this double big type of lineup, the versatility there makes a bunch of sense to me. I think Rob's going to be on a minutes restriction as well.
Yeah.
So if Rob's starting, you kind of remove that option of having those two guys come like in tandem at the beginning of the year. That's another reason why I'd have Rob coming off the bench personally.
And I also, that point you just made actually strengthens the whole TPE thing too, as far as bringing in an additional front court. Because I'm with you. I think that having that duo, think back to Aaron Baines and Al Horford and the success they had at times, a few years back together in Boston. And you're right. I think Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice put a sour taste in everyone's mouths, guys. But these, like you said, are two completely different animals. I would love to see them I think that they can get run together and it would be successful for all the reasons you named. And if they were to strengthen that front court by bringing in somebody else, or let's say maybe a Jabari Parker or somebody like that actually flashes, which is let's not forget who that kid is either. He was one of the best high school players of all time. It's Jabari Parker. You know who he is, and he's only 25 years old. The kid's a stud. So
it just takes time, man. Sometimes it's just, the injuries really set him back. I think the confidence isn't there right now. Man. The feel isn't there. Another guy who I think could have impact just as a high energy guy, and you've seen that's how Nesmith earned minutes last year, is Bruno Fernando.
Oh, man.
He was attacking. I know it was only summer league competition, and there's a huge difference. Yeah, attacking closeouts from the perimeter and driving straight to the lane, being able to give that secondary creation out of the low block. I don't think he's going to be an impact player. I don't think so. But I do think there'll be moments where he flashes potential that gets people excited for that development. So there are
athletic big.
I think Brad Stevens has done a great job in adding multifaceted players that are multi-skilled with good length, but he's also added the occasional project. Jabari Parker was there when Brad moved into the front office, but he added Fernando. And I think Fernando is one of those high upside, high energy, smash mouth kind of Montrezl Harrell type.
Oh yeah,
smash mouth basketball. I don't think he's going to be the pick and roll threat that Montrezl is, but who knows in a year or two down the line.
Yep. No, I'm completely with you. I wouldn't be surprised if we seen one of those bigs actually take that next step because, like you said, summer league or not, everyone's crowning Davion Mitchell the next best thing. That's based off of summer league. So you do see things in summer league that do translate. And his when he started, because he did miss the first game, correct?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And when he came in, it was an immediate difference. Like
Yeah.
that first game, it didn't even seem like they had a big. And then when he came in, it just completely changed it. So, yeah, man, I think we are of a similar mind as far as Rob and Al go. I'm excited to see either one of them. The big rotation, I think, is a lot better than people give it credit for. And I'm really
For
excited
sure.
to see what happens. Anything else you want to say about those two before we move on?
No, I'm good with the two bigs.
The only other one, and what we were going to do was get into a Smart versus Schroeder, because I think that might be one of the other big ones. But based off your video, man, like I said, I need to get into this whole Aaron Nesmith versus Josh Richardson debate, because you and Greg in your video the other day, I believe, both had him in your starting lineup, Aaron Nesmith, that is. And I even believe Greg had Josh Richardson not even coming into the game until the second quarter.
Yeah, it's a bit low minutes for me on Josh.
Woo! So I'm on the other side of it. I'm on Josh Richardson's camp. I believe he should be the starter. And why don't I let you start on that one? Why do you prefer Aaron? Just kind of go back and forth on those two gentlemen. What you expect?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Josh Richardson's another guy that needs touches. He's at his best when he can be part of a set that ends up with a shot for him, whether that be a dribble handoff or he sets an inverted screen or whatever it may be. He needs the ball in his hand to be effective. Not consistently, but as an off-ball shooter, he's not consistent at all. His spot-up shooting is quite poor. His catch and shoot doesn't really fill me with much excitement. So you need him to have the ball and be able to work himself into a rhythm. And he's not going to get the opportunity to do that in the starting five. There's just too many other ball handlers around him. The team are trying to develop Jason Tatum's playmaking. They're trying to develop Jaylen Brown's playmaking. Al Horford, if Al Horford starts, is going to be your quarterback in any 5-out schemes that you run. And then Marcus Smart, you want the ball in his hands to encourage him not to take these heat check shots. So putting Aaron Nesmith there to provide spacing, to kind of hone his defense against starter level guys and get option and be a genuine kick out threat that can shooter. Yeah, it makes more sense for me to have Nesmith there developing and offering a true scoring outlet when defenses collapse on one of these guys or two of these guys, than for Josh Richardson that isn't a kick out threat. Teams will sag off Josh Richardson. So being able to run a second unit backcourt of Dennis Schroeder and Josh Richardson, when now you have a dribble drive penetrator in Schroeder, and you have Josh Richardson that likes to operate as a cutter. So it works well together because Josh Richardson's at his best when catching the ball in motion and then pulling up 100%. Instead of being stationary. 100%. And that would be why I'd want Josh Richardson on that second unit, because his skill set doesn't fit well with the opportunities that would be available with that first unit.
I completely understand. And that's actually a fantastic point, because you're so right. If you look at this offseason, what has Ime preached over and over? It's the playmaking. Well, yeah. It's Jason and Jaylen getting more involved. And you are right. I'm in Florida, so the Florida network loves putting those Miami Heat game on. So I watched Josh Richardson every single game pretty much for 3 straight years. And you're right. He is more so a secondary creator, playmaker. He needs the ball in his hands to make things happen. And he's not going to be able to do that with the starting unit. I do agree with that 100%. But for me, it's the idea of a backcourt of Marcus Smart and Josh Richardson. That defensive potential and that duo is just like out of this world to me. And being able to bring Nesmith off the bench, because I just don't think he's there yet. I think he is at least a year away. He needs to,
for sure.
He's still too wiry and just like he's just drank an espresso shot before the game. Like he needs to refine it a little bit more and grow some. I can see him possibly maybe another year from now, walking in there and, becoming that starter. He's, his shooting ability, his defensive ability, even though, like I said, he's kind of like what you said about Rob. Like he's got a lot of, energy and potential, but sometimes is out of the, not in the best place and just needs to learn how to play a little better. But
what I'd say is ask yourself this: if you had a starting backcourt of Marcus Smart and Richardson, do you think defenses are going to respect them on the perimeter? Our defense is going to sag off these guys and dare them to shoot?
100%.
So at which point, running any 5-out form of offense, giving the space into Jaylen, it's gone. You've destroyed it.
Correct.
And I think that's where, as much as I love the the narrative of the defense that backcourt has. Offensively, everything that you're trying to do with Al Horford, because Al Horford needs to be on the perimeter really, and then come off a wedge screen to get into his post work. It's taken away, and that would be another reason why I'm like, it's the same reason I wouldn't put Dennis Schroeder and Marcus Smart together. Because defenses are just going to sag back, invite you to drive, shoot or drive, and then you're going to get two wings pinching in and really making life tough. And there's no kick out option because you don't have that natural scorer, and teams are already anticipating you throwing it to Brown or Tatum.
And the paint is crowded for them when they're trying to drive.
And that's why I'm just like, as much as I like the idea, the theory of a Richardson Smart backcourt, in practicality, I just don't think it gives you the modernized offense that you'd be craving to really accentuate Brown and Tatum as play finishers as well as play creators.
And it's funny because I think you're right. And the more I think of it, it's kind of like you made a good point as far as Richardson being with Horford opposed to with Rob. And that is actually something I prefer too. I'd rather Josh be out there with Horford for Horford's ability to stretch and shoot. Because if you're talking about, as I pointed out in our previous segment, I want Rob to start. Now you're talking about Smart, who has to prove mid-30s, Richardson mid-30s, Rob doesn't shoot, and then you've got Tatum and Brown. So you're right. The more I think of it, I mean, you might have just convinced me, but I'm just still not on Nesmith being that guy. I mean, who else? I mean, who else can go in there? Wancho with some size, Al.
Pritchard maybe, but you lose a little bit of the defense. I think the thing with Nesmith is, I've always said this, and I completely, I wholeheartedly believe this. Scoring gravity doesn't come from your percentage on threes. It comes from your attempts. It comes from the danger you are as a shooter, not from the success you have as a shooter. Amazing 3-point shooters have down years. Teams still respect them. When you're coming in on a scouting report, you're told this guy shoots 5 threes a night. So you don't sag off this guy, because that's what he's going to do. He's going to drain a J in your face. So when you're looking at Marcus, and I get that with Marcus Smart, will shoot 5 or 6 threes a night. So you have to respect it there. But the difference is that Nesmith has the reputation of a 3-point specialist.
He does.
So now you're coming in against a guy that shoots 5 or 6 threes a night and is known to drain these J's in people's faces. You have to respect that. Pritchard, you can switch a big guy, switch a 2 guard onto him or a wing onto him, and he's going to struggle to get that shot off. He has to take a step back down to the logo and take a really low percentage shot.
And his defense is not what Aaron's is.
Exactly. Juancho is definitely a stretch 4, but I don't think that he is starter level ability. I also think so for me, it's just that Nesmith's skill set directly fits what would benefit starting 5 the most. And, if Nesmith is making sophomore mistakes, that's fine, because you've got 2 all-star wings and one of the best veteran bigs in the league there to mop up after him and have a word with him in timeouts. Like, hey, you keep making this mistake. This is what they're doing to put you in a position to make that mistake. This is how you fix it. Go out there. Don't do that same stuff again. And I think that's only going to expedite Nesmith's development this year to, by the end of the season, he is ready for that starting role, and then you can go into the playoffs very confident with that 5.
I actually have nothing to say. I kind of agree with you, to be honest, because now the more I think of it, I don't think Richardson fits as well with who I want in that starters as far as my other 4. And I think it would be Nesmith for his ability to shoot the 3, and because he is, regardless of how wild he can be, he still is a solid defender with size. So I'm with you, man. Let's you ready to
carry on? 2 minutes.
Yeah. So as far as just to recap everything that we were saying today, going back and forth with the Rob versus Al battle, I believe we both made some fantastic points there. I'm very intrigued to see how that one pans out. You're in the camp of starting Al Horford. I'm more so on the Rob Williams, start him. But then more so we switched over to Nesmith versus Richardson. I was originally on the on the Richardson side, starting him. You were on Nesmith. However, you've kind of changed my mind based on, if I want Rob Williams to be in my starting unit, maybe Richardson shouldn't be in there. Maybe we could use the spacing, of Aaron Nesmith. Not to mention, I made a point early in the video about the Boston Celtics bench and scoring last year, even the year before that. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking about having Schroeder, either Rob or Al, Josh Richardson, Pritchard, Wancha. I mean, it's starting to get serious there, man. So before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to say? Anything, last comments as far as what we covered today?
No, man, I think we hit on every major talking point. The one thing I do want to say again is thank you very much for bringing me on. I think you're doing amazing with this channel to just be starting with it. Anybody that's watching, you can't ask for a better guy than James here. So one of the main things I'll say is please keep supporting him. Keep helping him grow, keep giving him the encouragement he needs to continue. And it was a blast, man. Honestly, truly my pleasure. I appreciate it.
No, the pleasure was all mine, sir. Guys, if you're coming from my channel, as soon as you leave here, the first thing you need to do not run to the kitchen, the bathroom, smoke, whatever it is. You need to go to Mr. Taylor's site, his page, subscribe. Adam, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm honored. I'm humbled. This was an amazing experience. I'll reiterate everything he just said. This is one hell of a man. We spent about 30 minutes talking before we even started getting into the Celtics, and the man is so much more than anything that he covers or writes. So know that as good as he is at covering the Celtics, he's even better as a human being. So Adam, thank you for your time. You didn't have to do this, sir. No matter where I go with my career, you'll be coming with me because I'll never forget what you gave and offered me today, brother. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. And everybody make sure you subscribe.
Jags to Riches, James Peters, Adam Taylor, NBA. Guys, thank you for your time. Have a blessed day. Take care.